Well, good afternoon, RSIR Nation. It's so good to see your smiling faces. I appreciate you all being here very much. We're going to have a fantastic day. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a minute. I know a few of us are trying to find parking, find our seats, get a bottle of water. We do have water in the center room there. If you're interested, we'll be here for just over an hour and change with Matthew Gardner and our panel. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes and we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Thank you. How are we doing for seats back there? A couple more left? Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with Market Maker 2024. I'm your president and CEO, Dean Jones, and it's a delight to see you here. You might recall just under a year ago, we had a market momentum event in the first quarter in March of 23, and we did that to analyze where the market has been and where it might be going. We wanted to go ahead and accelerate this conversation today because we think the spring is going to come in like a pretty significant pace, and we didn't want to wait for spring in order to talk about it. So we do hope you get a lot out of the conversation. Before I get into a few more introductions. Oh, technical difficulty. Thank you, Natalie. Perfect. Here you are from our event last March. The difference is in our DNA. Actually, we had a prior slide when we were here 10 years ago, guys. This office was born 10 years ago right now, and we took this fantastic photo. And look at how far we've come. What a difference a decade can make. Culture, community, connection, and this is exactly what this is all about, and it makes me so proud to be here with you in this great venue on our 10th anniversary. Okay. We are also grateful for Best of Kirkland. Guys, this happened last year. Thank you to City Lifestyle Magazine, Best of Kirkland, as our office turns 10. I think that's fantastic. And we've also been honored with that in Bellevue as well. So the East Side is definitely getting some love from your company, Realogics, Sotheby's International Realty. We know many of us from Bainbridge Island. How many came over right now? Congratulations to you guys, Best of Bainbridge. Just really great things happening, being voted by the community, being a member of the community. It makes me very proud. Very proud of this too. As you've seen, we finished 2023 with benchmark performance. And what I mean by that is this is setting the pace for all of your peers in the top 10 largest brands that we share here in the Northwest MLS. Just a few of them, you know you are the largest productive office for Sotheby's International Realty in the state of Washington with the highest per agent productivity, highest percentage of producing agents, fewest days on market, highest average prices paid or purchased and sold on both sides of the transaction, highest level or volume of inventory on a per agent basis, and actually the highest average commissions retained compared to your top 10 largest brands. So as I've mentioned a few times, I feel that these are the best seats in the industry, and you are producing these results. Let's do it again in 2024. Congratulations. Thank you. Next slide. So Andrea, I'd love to have you come up and just take the opportunity to share a few other details about the marketing department.
Sure. So Dean asked if I would just hit on some of the reports and campaigns that we've been releasing. Luxury Outlook report just released by Sotheby's International Realty recently. The report is fantastic. Many of you guys have already seen this from our meetings, but it's really a lovely way to understand that top wealth and then also through other markets lenses. So tax changes, try before you buy, builder confidence, and different demographic shifts that we're seeing across the globe. So it's not just a local report, but it's also a very global outlook and what we're going to be seeing into the years to come. So, and I also really love the graphic that they shared here. It really kind of talks about how many homes do our homeowners actually own, which was just interesting to see across our brand, across the globe. So with a 58.72 owning 2 homes and over 33% owning 3. So lots of really good information for you guys to dive into in that report. If you haven't seen it, please feel free to ask any of us to send it your way, and we'd be happy to share it. Next one.
Beautiful.
So in our new forecast report, we've been doing a forecast report every year that really looks at, we were used to do the past, and we look at the past trends, and we would give you the trends all the way up until today's date. However, Over time and after the pandemic, we talked to many of our agents and they told us, we don't want to look at the past anymore. We want to look towards the future. So we worked with many of you to try to figure out what that was. And for the last couple of years, we've been doing the future cast to look forward and what we can expect and having a lot of different perspectives from other thought leaders in our community, not just in real estate. So that being said, on this next evolution, we're going to be going more digital and we'll be doing a podcast series. So starting actually tomorrow, Dean's going to be interviewing some of these really great thought leaders within our community. And that is a way for you guys to be able to forward this to your clients, hear different perspectives, weigh in with your opinion. And then also, so you don't feel like your clients have to hear it directly from you, you can share it from other people's mouths. So good stuff. We're excited to see that take off.
And just to add on that, the idea of it being digital, rather than having sort of the evergreen issue of a report, say in Q1, maybe we're talking about something that's variable and we want to check in on it every month or every quarter. So having that ongoing conversation will kind of maintain a barometer for you. I really hope you take advantage of the content that's being generated for you by your company. We work hard to make it meaningful news you can use. We want you to be able to start a conversation that leads to a real estate transaction. And as Matthew's going to share with you, a little preview, there are probably 15 to 25% more sales volumes out there waiting to be discovered by you. So we need to pull the lever, we need to push the button to spark that conversation that generates the demand. And actually, I believe that that's our job, not just for the transaction, but to originate the demand for the transaction. So we're going to be having some provocative conversations that at a minimum will get heard and noticed, and then hopefully it generates leads for you. So this is the new content marketing machine.
So Dean actually highlighted on our 10-year anniversary within Kirkland, and then also helped me recognize that actually we're on our 10 years with the PSCJ. So Puget Sound Business Journal, actually talking with them years before that on doing a voting system and working on a real estate platform that would be in the leading source of news for our market. And then came about the Home of the Day. And so now it's been 10 years that we've been in that platform, and so we're continuing to evolve this. And it's great because they've been incorporating video, all of our beautiful photography, and then also putting it in their newsletters and also on print. So we've got a really good advantage with them.
How many of you have been featured in Puget Sound Business Journal Home of the Day? Lots of hands over there. I think that this is one of the distinctive, exclusive advantages that we provide to you, and we want to continue providing it, and Andrea's going to share how we can do that, with your help.
Yeah, so as Dean mentioned, we actually have several packages available if you guys would like to purchase in advance. The nice thing that we've been working with the team on is if you want to go for a higher package, then we'll actually do a monthly cost on a monthly basis, so that you're not just paying it all up front, but then you can divide it up through months. So lots of great options for you, especially if you know you've got a few listings that are coming down the pipeline in the new year. We know several of you do, so we'd love to work with you on making sure you get the feature and also get exposed.
And this is how you can guarantee at a listing appointment, not only are you going to have these benchmark performance results, but we can guarantee you to be in the Puget Sound Business Journal because you're going to own the spot for that particular day. So I think that's fantastic. Matthew Gardner, why don't you join me up here? Matthew has been a longtime friend for over 25 years. We just had lunch and we were talking about 25 years ago, when really, you know...
We both had hair.
We both had hair. I still have it, it's just turned gray. But it's been an honor to watch you, thrive in this industry and really throughout the metro area and internationally even. Well respected. I'm going to give you the floor in a minute. I just wanted to ask a question of the team. Anything specifically you would like to learn from today's meeting? We're going to go through a lot of macroeconomics, but if there's any burning questions that you wanted us to address, I wanted to open up the floor briefly for anyone's shout out. Questions? Burning questions? Tadashi.
House Bill 1110.
We're covering it.
Yeah.
Definitely a big one.
They didn't say the election.
Yes. Who's going to win the elections?
No.
What's it going to do to housing?
No.
Okay. Any other burning questions out there? Should we just jump in? Fantastic. Matthew, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Take it away.
We'll stand there for a second. Hello. Hello, sir. All right. How are you? Who here has seen me speak before? I got groupies. Cool. So thank you for coming out today. Thank you, Dean, for the invitation. As you know, well, those of you who don't know me, yes, I'm English. for my sins, not Australian, that's a good part. But therefore I talked too quickly, and I apologize for that. But we got so much to cover. I thought I had a lot more time, and then Dean said, okay, 45 minutes, okay. So we're going to jam through things pretty quickly. But don't worry, I'll be around at the end. I'll be around for quite a while. If you do have those burning questions, feel free, come find me. We'll have a cocktail. I was actually in Walla Walla yesterday. You realize that Walla Walla, I was giving you a speech down there, they bottle 90 gallons of wine per capita. Wow. Oh yeah, they like their wine in Walla Walla. All right, so big picture. Start top to bottom. I like to start out with what's going on in the US economy. It is important. We think we're special here in Seattle because it's Seattle, but we aren't necessarily, that's not necessarily always the case. You can only talk about anything without talking about inflation. We know what happened. All of a sudden, the government was putting money into our bank accounts. We had all kinds of issues going on with supply chains. And we saw headline inflation, the high level number you see here, hit 9%. Now, that's not good. And we all feel it still. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's like, good God, how much do I have to pay for a dozen eggs? But it is coming down, and that's important. Here's why. The Federal Reserve. I blame the Fed for everything. My kids' bad grades, bad teeth, blame the Fed. They have what's called a dual mandate, and I say that for an important reason. Two jobs. One, full employment. Check that box. Two, stable inflation. And how they can control inflation one way, and that is one interest rate. It's called the Fed funds rate. It's the overnight lending rate between banks. And you can see here, we were actually getting a bit ahead of ourselves back in 2016, 2017. They started raising interest rates. COVID came along, down to zero, and then woohoo, the fastest increase in that rate in 42 years. Now, this is my forecast going forward. I think that, I'll go backwards. I think we're done with rate hikes. That's the good part. The question is going to be, how long will they keep them at this level before bringing them down? Now, the problem when they started raising rates is very simple. They try and slow the economy down, very simply because if they start raising interest rates, we are a nation of consumers. We will hopefully spend less, and we can slow the economy down, have what's called a soft landing. Here's the trouble. They're crap at it. Oh no, they're really bad. They've got it right twice in history since the Fed has existed. Every other time, they wait too long to raise rates. Check that box. I think they did. They also keep them higher for too long. And we end up having a recession. But here's the thing. They're going to get it right this time. I really think they will. I am not seeing a recession. Now, last year, every economist was saying, oh, Gardner, no. Just because he sounds English, try to make him sound smart. He's really from Yakima. You are listening, cool. But over time, the last several months, some of my friends at Morgan Stanley, a bunch of other investment banks, they're now saying, yeah, I think we can orchestrate that soft landing. We're going to be okay. And this is my forecast. This is core inflation, CPI. It's not going to come down to that 2% the Fed want. That's okay. It will take time, but it is going the right direction. And more people now are thinking, yeah, we won't have a recession. That's very important because when we start thinking that way, we start feeling a bit more confident about the economy, start to feel a bit more confident about going out and doing things like buying houses. So as we go through this year, I do expect the Fed to reduce rates by probably a point to a point and a quarter, give or take. That's less than Wall Street wants. They're greedy, that's Wall Street. But it is certainly, we're not going to go up. The market wants rates to start dropping in March, the first meeting. I think it's going to be May. So a couple of months later, they just want to get a bit more data through. A couple of data points this week that are coming out. GDP we'll see for Q4 on Thursday, and another inflation factor comes in on Friday. So let's see what happens. But bottom line is the worst is behind us. So labour market's interesting as well. Job growth is going to continue to grow. We'll add jobs. Now that 112 number you see here means that we should have added 112,000 jobs per month in the quarter. But it is getting a lot slower. The problem is once you get below 100, we're adding to the labour force. More people than that. So because of that, the unemployment rate's going to rise to a whopping 4.2%. Oh, the humanity. How are we going to survive? That's a weird joke, by the way. It's going to be fine, literally. I mean, 4% unemployment, tough life. Now, there's a lot of business owners, however, last year, I gave a speech actually for Business Journal. And back then, it was early last spring, I said, yes, there might be a recession. And they were applauding me. Like, what kind of weirdness is this? I said the R word, recession. They're like, yay. What? Here's the point. They're trying to get people to come back into the office. And right now, the labour market is so tight, they're going to their staff saying, come on back. And the staff are saying, nope, you can't make me. You try too hard, I'm going to go down the street and make more money. But as the economy does slow, boot moves onto other foot. And all of a sudden, yeah, maybe they are going to start coming back. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out through the course of this year. Growth, GDP, how we define recessions, 2 negative quarters. That didn't count. Not a recession, that's COVID. Blame COVID. But my forecast for this year, balance of the year, pretty solid. No 2 negative, in fact, no quarters of negative growth. But there are still some very miserable people out there say, oh no, we've got to have a slowdown, blame the Fed. And they think of this, but even if we do see these numbers, which I don't think we will, for almost all of us, we'll have the recession and you won't even notice it.
Question, Matthew.
Shoot.
A lot of us were kind of hoping for a very brief recession so that the Fed fund rate and mortgage interest rates would drop. It would also be a nice rally call for the presidential elections. How much control does the president or that agenda have?
So the Fed's apolitical. And here's the problem. They start reducing rates too fast during the course of this year. Oh, one gentleman out there is going to be screaming blue murder. He'll say, oh, you're doing this just because you want the other side to win. The Fed does not control mortgage rates. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it does have a certain influence over them. Right now, I mean, the S&P today, we're close at 4,900, all-time high. The stock market's doing remarkably well, believe it or not. The economy is kind of chugging along quite nicely, and it's okay. But does that mean, when the Fed starts reducing rates very quickly, it means there's bad things ahead. But they do not directly control mortgage rates. Even if they come down, and they will, I expect we'll probably see rates down around 4% by the end of the year, then in 3s for the Fed funds rate going forward. But the problem with that is very simple. They don't control mortgage rates, but borrowing costs are going to remain higher in general than you'd like to see because we've got so much debt. Can't help that, $32 trillion. And you have to fund that debt, and you fund it by issuing more debt. And that has a direct correlation with mortgage rates, which we'll get to. So you might say, I want a mild recession. I think that not having one will increase confidence more so. Then we'll see the Fed dropping rates a bit quicker. Are we going to see mortgage rates? But I'm getting ahead of myself when I get into mortgage rates, though. So big picture, equity growth last 15 to 41% last year, really good. People, as mortgage rates were rising, taking money out of other asset classes, taking money out of the stock market. And so, actually, yeah, they'll fall. That will also act as an economic boost. 70% of our economy is consumption, us buying stuff. And so as borrowing costs drop, we start buying stuff, you can keep on going. The economic cycle is about 7 to 8 years. So we're actually the early part of that new economic cycle. Eurozone is important given the fact that you do have exposure to foreign buyers. It will grow very modestly, I think, during the course of this year. Most emerging nations will actually grow at a faster pace. China won't. China's in all kinds of bad waves right now, which I'll talk about over a cocktail later. But we are going to see South America do well. India's going to do well. So I think that there are different parts of the globe, and certainly the US. Everyone's looking at it. If we bypass the recession, that's going to be good for investment in the US, which in turn becomes good for all of us. Diversification. And I think that is another thing. Once you start getting ahead of the curve when it comes to equities, dare I say crypto, I try not to, Ponzi scheme, by the way. It's one of those things, but I think we are going to see some of that. And as people look forward, they're going to look at housing as a way to further diversify their investment portfolio. And yeah, it is an election year. Now, some will say it gets slower the closer to the election you get. It can become a bit frenetic, but in general what happens is nothing much. Because once we get to about May, June time, everyone's waiting to see who's going to be in the White House come next January. So the market kind of treads water for a while until they see, okay, it's going to be, well, God, I didn't know who's running right now. No. Time will tell. It's going to be fun to watch. Get the popcorn out. Probably 15%, yeah, there is still a likelihood we could have a very mild recession. The labour force is waning. Interesting about thing about the labour force is the fact that early days of COVID, a lot of our more mature workers, they're like, hell with this, I'm out. And off to Yuma, Arizona they went. But a lot of our younger workers had an early midlife crisis. I don't know what to do. I'm going to become an author. And they left the workforce as well, very tight workforce. And also, under the last administration, we shut the borders down, weren't really seeing much in the way of migration into the US either. So that actually will help as we slow down to limit the fact we will see unemployment rate rise, but really, it'll be just fine. Yeah, Fed, they are walking a tightrope. Do too much, do too little, bad things can happen. But I honestly think, yes, they'll orchestrate that soft landing and it's going to be okay. So, why is it important? Yeah, we're not, I don't think we are. And that creates confidence. And confidence is what's important, especially when it comes to housing, which for 97% of the population of America will be the most expensive thing they will ever buy in their lives. So you really want to look going forward. Is it going to be bad or not? That's going to be important. Solid equity markets. Yeah, I do expect to see some households start to pull some money away to offset those higher financing costs with higher mortgage rates. So again, people are saying, I really don't like mortgage rates where they are. No one does. But October 1981, where were mortgage rates? 18% plus points, 20%. And people still bought houses. Last time we were 8%, 2001. Still sold more than 5 million homes nationally. So everyone's like, oh no, this is terrible. I'll explain why in a minute. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how this does all play out. Locally, very quickly, adding jobs, 26,000 jobs last year, King, Snohomish counties. Still a contraction, mainly because of layoffs in the tech sector and layoffs obviously at T-Mobile, but more than offset elsewhere. And I think as we go forward, jobless rate 3.6, well, that is definitely full employment. And we will add jobs this year. I'm forecasting probably a bit more than 20,000 jobs in the two-county area. And percentage-wise, going forward, those of you from down south in Pierce County, that's been growing at 5%. And that's an interesting thing to see. Again, a lot of people are looking now at Pierce County as a potentially viable option for office space. I'm not sure. They've tried it every decade or so. It's kind of like when Saks Fifth Avenue said they're going to move into Seattle. We have a recession. Remember? We worked on things many, many years ago. It's like, yeah, they're coming yet. Oh, no, they're not. Now, locally, yeah. High-paying industries were a challenge because of the technology sector, information technology. What happened there? They got bloated. They hired too many people. They were just cutting some of the fat. And they're just slimming themselves down. And that certainly hits us because of technology and our exposure to that market. At the same time, we've still got people coming here from California.
What's the counterbalance on that? Does anybody know in the last year how well tech companies have performed as stock values? Does anyone know the number that gain in equity for owners of stock in tech companies? It's $1.5 trillion was returned to stockholders in the tech industry. Mm-hmm. So while a few people might lose a job because they're slimming or cutting down fat, as you mentioned, the counterbalance is the tech stock values booming, and some have been at record highs. AI, look at Microsoft stock. Why does that matter to us around here? A lot of jobs are still in tech, and they have a lot of restricted stock units, which to me is an incubation of future wealth.
Oh, sure.
It could be a great target in a city that has more people renting than owning, and that's a challenge. So
very much so. We will outperform most other metro areas in terms of economic growth, in terms of job growth, of course, of 2024. So certainly better than California, Boston, Chicago. I really expect us to outperform yet again. As everyone looks at Seattle like, where's this weird place? Have to dig out a map to find it. We do well, and I think that is definitely going to continue. All right, get your cocktails now, please. Rates. Blame the Fed. Mortgage rates. How are mortgage rates created? You take the yield on 10-year treasuries. You add on 1.7%. That was how they were created in April 1971. You say, well, hang on, Gardner, 30-year mortgage, 10-year treasury. Doesn't make, we move every 10 years on average. That's why. So because they're based on it, the bond market used to be the grown-up in the room. It used to be stoic, like, I will let equities do their thing. It's all going to be fine. Well, then they started looking at things a bit too closely. And because of that, we had these mad fluctuations. Now, I can go back to 2021. Again, remember, blame the Fed. Mortgage rates. At the start of COVID, the Fed wanted two things. One, they wanted housing stability, i.e., you can't kick somebody out for not paying their rent, moratoria on evictions. Two, forbearance. A brilliant, brilliant program, which said you didn't have to pay your mortgage, you would not be foreclosed on, But at the end of that forbearance period, you've got to make the bank right by refinancing, extending, whatever that may be. In the space of 6 weeks, 1 in 10 homes in America was in forbearance. 1 in 10, literally. Today, 0.6%. It worked. But there were buyers out there who said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy, I'm going to wait. Because we'll have a tsunami of foreclosures at the end of forbearance, and I will pick up a home on the cheap. What do they miss out on? 35% price growth and sub 3% mortgages.
No distress.
They failed horribly. Now, at the same time, the Fed wanted us to go shopping. And when do we go shopping? When we buy things like houses. Big ticket items, we start going for fridges and freezers, what have you. So what did it do? It went on its own shopping spree. It started buying those 10-year treasuries. It started buying those mortgage-backed securities. How much, you ask? $2.4 trillion. 12 zeros, by the way. It's a big, big number. And because of that, mortgage rates dropped down below 3 for a 30. It was fake. It should never have happened. It should absolutely never have happened. But they just tried to stimulate that market, and they did. And then, of course, we had a time about a year and a half later, Jerome Powell came up and said, we are going to move from quantitative easing, printing money, buying treasuries, to quantitative tightening. We're not buying anything anymore. Mortgage rates doubled in 8 months, literally, because of that. No one else out there to buy them. I mentioned the bond market, it gets very scared of what's going on. So here's a couple of things. So all of a sudden we had a good treasury auction, mortgage rates dropped down from just shy of 6.6 down to almost 6. Yeah, but then inflation got worried, they were back up again. Then the banking crisis, that was a wild thing. Mortgage rates dropped again, but then big jobs report happened, debt ceiling, that debacle. GDP got revised, inflation got a bit better, came down a hair. But then the Fed raised rates, Bank of Japan started selling US bonds, and then higher for longer, according to Jed Powell. But, wow, the fastest drop in mortgage rates. There's only one other time I can think of, 1991, where we saw as fast a drop in rates. Dropped down, when they were coming down, I had brokers come up saying, this is great, Matthew, we're going to be back at 3% again next week. Like, call your jets. No, we're not. Not going to work that way. And we've actually seen an uptick the last couple of weeks. Bottom line is, are we going to see rates continue to pull back? Yes, we will. There is no doubt about it. Are we going to go back to those sub threes? No. When we did that, a lot of sales were pulled forward. There's no doubt about it. And that had major impacts as well. But they are going to continue to trend down. And think about jumbo rates, non-conforming, really been tracking conventional mortgages very, very closely. Now, I said rates should be yield on 10-year paper plus 1.7. It's actually 2.7 today. Why? Blame the banks. Right now, banks, well, their cost of borrowing has gone up. Blame the Fed. They also think that rates are going to come down. And what happens when someone refinances? They lose that money. Therefore, they're adding an additional premium into the marketplace as well. So those things are going on. This is my first ever meme I made. Yeah. It is so true. It really is. Who here either bought a home or refinanced through COVID? I've refinanced twice. I've got a 2% 20-year fixed rate mortgage. It's free money. And here's the problem with that. You have to pry that mortgage from my cold, dead fingers. I ain't going nowhere. And that was the thing the Fed didn't understand. Try to stimulate the market, that's great. But all of a sudden, we find ourselves literally with golden handcuffs. Very much so. When you talk about golden handcuffs, there's some great numbers I get from the FHFA. In the state of Washington, 84% of homeowners got a mortgage rate at 5 or lower. And 1 in 4 has got a rate at 3 or lower. That's a huge, huge number. I said dollar sales were pulled forward. Yes, but here's the thing. As rates drop, which they will, and I'll show you how far momentarily, then all of a sudden that desire for people just to keep hold of that mortgage rate, that starts to go away, starts to bleed. Now you are still seeing transactions, right? For the 3 classic reasons: job change, death, divorce. What we're missing out on is the 4th D, discretionary, that choice to move. But as rates come down to within about 1.5 0.75 from somebody's current rate, then they want to move, they're going to move. That is going to start freeing up more inventory as mortgage rates start to pull down, to drop lower. So that is a good thing, I believe. But we were put in a situation that was no one's fault other than, blame the Fed. My forecast, I think, will be just above 6% at the end of this year. Now you can say that's terrible. No, it's not. Pretty good. We'll be in the 5s next year. But I think the terminal rate for mortgages for a 30-year mortgage is around 5.5%. So we're not going back to those sub-3s. Why do I say 5.5? It goes back to that debt we have. There's a lot of it. Until we can try and turn that around, pretty much impossible. You know the government, right? Spend money like drunk sailors on shore leave. That's what they're doing. And that's going to be a problem. And again, that will have a direct correlation to rates. But if you look at the 5s, it's fine. Now, people are still buying homes today, even where rates are, because they're hedging. They believe rates will drop further, at which point they will refinance.
Can we park it there for 1 second?
Sure.
Because I think this is one of the most pivotal things that we can do as realtors, as influencers, as having content to distribute. And Jolene, we were talking about this yesterday. What is the percentage increase of buyers that will rush the field within 30 or 60 days of rates falling into the 5s? I think there's a psychological impact that's going to happen. And those that know will get ahead before the show, right?
Yep.
Those are the ones, like how many of us thought that the last 6 weeks were busier than we would have anticipated? And we're seeing it in the stats. I mean, loan originations are up, sales volumes are up, our pending sales are 15% higher in December than they were a year ago.
If I'm right, got a 0.5% drop from the average on Q4 to average on will be on Q1.
I think you said just a minute ago that we had one of the fastest declining
Yes, we did.
mortgage rates in recent memory.
Yeah, 91, 92 last week came close.
And so you see headlines like that as a buyer, and you're like, uh-oh. You know, I think many of us realize there's more of us that are going to go step out into the field. And then now what we're going to get back into is multiple offers, competition. We have historic lows of inventory. So it probably is a good time to be a buyer if you have that approach, saying that I think the meaningful number is the strike price of real estate versus the temporary infliction of a higher mortgage rate. Because you get the benefit of the strike price forever. You only have to pay the punch on a mortgage rate until you refinance. So if you really think the market's going to fall another 100 basis points, just refi. Buy, then refi. But do it in a comfortable manner without a lot of competition. And that's my sense this spring.
Oh, sure, and you're absolutely right. I mean, transactions are still going on now based upon that hedging, that belief that rates will drop, people will refi. And I think we had thousands upon thousands of people were laid off in financial services, mainly in not mortgage originations, but in refinancing activity, which disappeared. 2025 and 2026 are going to be massive years on the refi market. I have no doubt about it at all. For those people that were smart, that did exactly what Dean was saying, and they got in early, yes, acknowledging the rates are higher, but as they come down, sure, refi. But don't lose that home that you've always wanted just because you think it's going to cost a bit too much in your monthly payment. Obviously, it's way too much, that's one thing. I was giving a speech in California last month, and they were telling me then, even in California, that cream puff houses, that they call them, which are ones perfect, move-in ready, don't have to do anything, still getting bidding wars. In California, even though that many Californians are leaving the state and coming here, of which there are a lot of them. So that is still without a doubt going on. So holding back, that it will be short-sighted. Hello. Sure.
Are you seeing any particular migration patterns because of tax conditions from bigger markets?
Yep, I will get to that shortly. You've got ahead of me just a little bit. So give me 1 second, I'll show you. And I will show you that right about now. Actually, it's now. Not just me that thinks rates are coming down. I have a Zoom happy hour, some buddies of mine, chief economists of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, mortgage bankers. Well, we're a dry group, but we can be fun with a couple of cocktails. The only one that's off on this one is Lawrence at NAR. He's saying he only puts his forecast out every quarter. That's his October forecast, so I'm sure it will come down the next couple of weeks when he publishes his new one. But all of us think this is where rates will be Q1 and where they'll be in Q4 this year. No one is seeing them go up. And in fact, Fannie, yeah, he likes his Manhattans. I mean, his sub-6 in Q4, I can't get my head around that. But again, the trend is going the right way.
Did you say no one believes that mortgage rates are going up for next year? How many of them believe that median home prices are going down in the next year?
Last time I checked, Mortgage Bankers Association see a 0.4% drop next year and also the same the year after. That's the only one.
So basically flat.
Yeah.
So are you really
nationwide,
saying
by the way?
A savvy consumer and realtor right now would say buy the bottom when it's comfortable to go shopping. If you see the home and you're ready for it, you're probably pretty good to go ahead, secure that strike price, and then if mortgage rates continue to drop,
Yeah.
refinance.
And also, housing's not fungible. Fungible, easily tradable. It's not like a stock. And so, when you're in it for a longer period of time, the buying an equity, right? And so, yeah, you go through this. And don't forget, nationally speaking, home prices on an annualized basis have only gone down twice in history, going back to 1890, the most recent data, well, earliest data I have. They historically go up by inflation, nationally again, not here, but across the country. So, yeah, they will keep on going up, and I think they will. But in terms of getting in now, yeah, there's still a discrepancy between what homeowners think their home is worth and what a willing buyer is prepared to pay. Well, sure, sellers see the media, they see the inventory limitations and say, I pruned my rhododendron tree last week. It's worth more than 100 grand more than the guy next door. And that's their perception. So a lot of that is being driven by the fact of shortage of housing, limit supply, have net new demand, what happens to prices? Of anything,
That's
they
the
go up.
most important thing we could be saying right now, and if you wait for the headline, that means you've missed the trend line. The trend lines are right in front of you. You're listening to it. And if you wait for the Seattle Times to say, oh, they're back, the buyers are back, multiple offers, what do you think's actually happened? You've had about 60 or 90 days of the trend. So this is the challenge, and I think that's where we're going to be in the spring.
Yeah.
So that actually says you should be buying now, not waiting for that.
Yep. So what do buyers think right now? Again, numbers I get from the Fed. Buyers think 12 months out, again, nationally, home prices will be 3% higher than they are today. Yes, we went through that weird time, obviously because of COVID, and again, when we saw mortgage rates skyrocket. But even existing homeowners and would-be buyers, they're not seeing a market they believe is going to go down in value. But it's going to go up. And again, this is based nationally, not just to any specific marketplace. Why is it important? Yeah, rates are going to continue to pull back. Point of fact, they will. Might not be every single week, but that will certainly be the case. Because of that, you'll start seeing more listings. And more listings, more potential buyers out there, buying power rises. Every 1 percentage point drop in mortgage rates, somebody's buying power increases by 10%. It's just mathematics. Why I love math, right? It doesn't lie. It's black or it's white. There's no gray. And it's just literally a formula. So that helps. So again, as they continue to decline, that helps across the board. It starts freeing up some buyers, some sellers. That helps buyers. People's buying power increases. Market gets back, starts trying to head a little bit closer to normal. Yeah, if you wait, don't wait for the market to come to you. You've got to go to the market. Otherwise, you will miss out, specifically in markets like ours. We have way too much water, way too many mountains, which can be great in certain respects, but it limits inventory. We're not like another Phoenix, right? It's going to build out as far as the eye can see. Doesn't happen here. And it's also a place that people want to be in, great companies being created here. Now, whether it's technology we talked about, I'm a big fan right now of biotechnology. And I think life sciences, Seattle-based, we are the fastest growing biotech area in the nation. We're not the largest. San Francisco, Boston, Atlanta are significantly bigger. We are the fastest growing. And we'll find a cure for any form of cancer in the next 5 years, I hope. So it's good. One can offset the other. We are a smart group of people around here, and therefore companies want to be here as well. On the demographic side, here we are. Demographics, organic growth. What's organic growth? Take the number of people born minus the number of people who die. Nice when it's a positive number. A lot of places weren't. In fact, I was down in Walla Walla yesterday. 217 more people died over a 3-year period than were born. And even in Seattle, even in King County, 16,500. At the start of COVID, what happened? I was getting calls from brokers saying, guess what? We're all going to move to Yakima. In fact, no, we're not at all. Did we move? Yes. But in our market here, it was the resurgence of ex-urban and suburban markets, i.e., going from King County, either the county periphery, look at the gentrification that's been going on, Mountain Lake Terrace, Lake Forest Park, those markets, up into Snohomish County, down into Pierce, out into Kitsap. North Kitsap, not south. Why? If ever the Bremerton passenger-only ferry didn't break down every day, that would be cool, but it does. But we didn't move that far. So you think about Skagit County, no. The reason being is it's too far. People will move further away to get a house that's bigger, pay all cash, whatever that may be. They're not going to go so far, understanding the fact they're going to have to come back to the office, and they will, for at least a few days a week.
And this data will be based on the principal registered address, so it will not speak to second home ownership.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, this is straight from the census. So that's organic growth. Okay, God. Domestic migration, people moving from here to somewhere else in the States. Horrible. Have to remember, the Tri-County area is home to 52% of the state's population, 51% of the state's housing units. But people moved, that was that migration further away through COVID. Who were the beneficiaries? Clark County, 8,017. Spokane County, 7,267. Now, what was going on there? I was actually giving a speech in Spokane last week. I saw a traffic jam in Spokane. I kid you not. It's like, what the hell? Wow. So we did see that. It's actually because of that, it's actually got its own housing affordability problem. People are buying homes in Post Falls, Idaho, and commuting to Spokane. Never thought I would ever say that. So this looks horrible, right? Actually, it's not. Why? International migration, where King County added on over 32,000 people. We are smart here. H-1B visa programs reopened again. People coming here. Now, don't forget, international people, if they're coming here to move here, to live here, to stay here, they have a greater propensity to buy a home. They just do. Certainly multi-generational, depending on where they come from. So we've seen that significant increase in our market here. Now, if we see that continue, because we know we don't want to go the way of China. I mean, China, back in the day, one kid and get a tax break, more than one, no, you don't. They flipped that completely. They found out that more people are dying than being born. Now have 3 children, get a tax break. We understand the fact you're not going to grow organically. We are a nation of immigrants. Look at us, we are. So, and Dan Dean as well. So really, that's what we need to. Now, in terms of directly to your question, a lot from California. California lost population last year to the tune of about 680,000 people. Jump on 5, mainly from Northern California, Bay Area and north. Southern California, they either went east to Riverside, south to San Diego. North, I-5, the 5 they call it, up to Oregon, a few of them stayed there, bunch came here. They also didn't just come to Washington State, Austin, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, Boise, Idaho, and Montana. They watched Yellowstone. I was actually giving a speech out there last year, and I said to the owner of the office that here's the deal. All these Californians that bought a home the year before, they're going to sell this year. He's like, no, they won't. I said, yes, they will. Next time I saw him, I said, and? Like, yes, they did. Los Angeles here, a Californian who's never seen 8 feet of snow in his life, other than skiing. And the other thing is, that little lever that says 4WD on their new truck does not make you invincible. So they booked. But you say, well, why Texas? Because California is notoriously liberal. And why Utah? Salt Lake City and Austin are dots of blue in a sea of red. In fact, Salt Lake City is one of the most liberal cities in America. So that's happening there. But a lot of because a lot of it, especially in California, climate change is big for them. Also taxes, both income and property taxes. But climate change, they're sick and tired of forest fires and floods and mudslides and Gavin Newsom. So up they're coming. And that is why they're losing. That's going to be a big problem for them going forward. Northern Californians coming here, having sold their 1-bedroom Muse house for $3.2 million. We're cheap. That's great. So that's where we're seeing a lot of that happening. In terms of us going somewhere, Idaho, certainly Boise. Boise's a big issue. You could buy a great house in 2019 for $295,000. Same house today, $650. So big issue there in terms of so much demand coming in from wealthier areas. But in general, as a state, we did not lose. We were one of the biggest in-migration actually came in Florida. And that was mainly from people from New York, right? Those that didn't stop in Georgia kept on going.
We lost Bezos, so let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
But, they're going to repeal the capital gains tax, which could be one of the little Achilles heels we've had, right? 7% sale of securities, kind of a big deal if you're going to sell tech stocks. And that's some of the consideration.
We'll see if that's going to be repealed. The trouble is the US Supreme Court refused to hear it. So they threw it back down to the lower court. So that's still, I can't say whether that will be repealed or not. I think it is contrary to the state charter, personally speaking. But I'm not a lawyer, thank the gods.
Well, it's going to be on the ballot. And Kurt Owen, who is coming over from UBS, who will be speaking to us in a bit, says it'll definitely be. They got those signatures. So they're trying to repeal the capital gains tax, which was a problem for us. We have lost business because people don't want to sell stock in the state of Washington, pay 7%. The other issue is probate. It's people are dying to move out of Washington. Sorry, I had to go there. Because, markets like Florida are receiving them. I know a number of people that have cashed out of Washington to move to Florida because it's sunny without
And Arizona.
California's state income tax. They want the ocean, so Arizona didn't work, and they're going to Florida.
Right. Oh yeah, I think we'll see how that all plays out. But you're right certainly about Bezos. I mean, they've actually the company changed their dynamic. Back in the day, the maximum salary you could ever make at that company, Amazon, was $185,000 a year. The rest was all based upon stock. That then changed significantly because of that. Then it became actually based more on salaries and less on options. So it's been interesting to see how that has played out. All right, I know I'm going to go. But here's the thing. Designing people, again, because of international. Why? What's up? We have 1.3 millennials. 1.3 of them living in the four-county area. Almost 800,000 moves. These are two major demographics when it comes to housing. For some of the reasons that we mentioned earlier on, Dean said. One of which is the oldest millennial, they're turning 40 now. They're getting old. Hey, I'm Gen X, we just hate everyone. But they are having real relationships and having babies. And yes, that house they want. Also, baby boomers, having gone out, if they haven't left already, they are going to start retiring out of the workforce. As they do that, they're going to start looking to move, again, for exactly the same reasons that Dean mentioned earlier on. So I think we've got a lot. Again, this is just a four-county area. It is significant, and that is going to drive it. Now, on the demand side, well, then you add in the millennials, look at Gen Z behind that. We've got 15 to 20 years of demand out ahead of us, literally. I mean, I teach at University of Washington as well, and my undergrads, I actually know my MBA guys, when they graduated a while ago, I'm like, okay, where are you going to move to? Chicago, Boston, New York? No, Seattle, staying here. They're staying here, guess what? Mum and dad are staying here because they want to see grandchildren. So we're not moving on.
Can just to park it one more second on the millennials and just the volume of potential business. These are would-be buyers that are incubating in expensive apartment towers that have stock options worth millions of dollars, which last time I checked, Jolene, we can qualify based upon that would-be income. So there's something there about, where I would spend some time and money and content is helping first-time home buyers. And I've literally seen people move out of a studio rental into a waterfront estate. It happens because they're just waiting. And it might be a life event, and they are having marriages later, and having children later, so they are a buyer later, and there's a lot of demographic studies on this. But the Seattle metro area might be the most ripe market in the United States for incubated millennial tech workers that have stock options that haven't yet found a realtor and figured out when they're going to buy.
Yeah, anecdotally, a few years ago, I was giving a speech. I speak to a nice lady afterwards, again, millennial age, saying, okay, me and my husband, we live in an apartment. We're spending about $1,800 a month on rent. We're thinking about buying. I said, okay, what's your price point? So about $2 million. Like, what? Oh, yeah, we're not going to pay money in rent, so we've just been saving it up. And again, they are out there, and there's a lot of them. There's no doubt about it. And they do understand the value that homeownership brings. I mean, very quickly, I'll digress a bit. Every 3 years, the Fed does a great study that looks at the median household wealth of a homeowner household in America versus the median household wealth of a renter household in America. They just published the latest numbers. Median household wealth in America of a homeowner household is just over $350,000. Median household wealth of a renter household in America, just over $10,000. Big discrepancy? You betcha. So it is a very, very big thing. Yeah, well, just what Dean said. Yeah, they're thinking of moving, buying, move. Absolutely they are. And that's a lot. There's a big component of our region. And finally, yeah, immigration policies. Depending on the next election, we expand those, grow those. And so we know every tech company wants more H-1B visas issued. And we are one of the largest 3 areas for H-1B visa issuances in America. Is right here. That expands, again, higher propensity to own their homes.
And EB5 as well.
I mean, yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm going to zap through this last peak. I want to get into any question you have. Just very quickly, I thought I'd break down the 4 counties that they said you guys have a presence in. Just looked at units above $1 million. Let's look at the entire Northwest multiple. Obviously, King County kills it, without a doubt. Very significant share. I also grabbed some data from MLS out in Spokane as well, because it was a reasonable number. So the last 4 years has been big. But the share of sales used to be all here, 78%, and then tailing off. But in 2023, Snohomish County saw a significant growth. Yeah?
What's your definition of luxury?
Well, this was just, well, as I said on the slide first one, which would be, well, he says, we're going backwards, not forwards. It's $1 million, I believe. Because the reason why I put it in as being $1 million, there you go, price of $1 million. The reason why I put that is if you don't, then you have to, ultra luxury, that's just King County. And I could talk for an hour about that. Sorry, so very quickly, that's it. We saw the share massively here, but then all of a sudden, big growth actually slightly to north up in Snohomish County. Greater proportion of sales. Now across the 4-county area, your market, it's clearly right here. $1 million doesn't buy you very much anymore around here. I hate to say it, but point of fact. But we did see a decline for a couple of years, yet the other 3 counties only saw 1 year's worth of decline in terms of sales. So when you think about it in that term, big market, other 3, lower share, that then changed in 2022 fairly significantly. So you are seeing people getting into that step up, or they're moving out of King County into those other markets. We talked about that migration away. It's not going to Yakima. It is going to adjacent counties. It's not going to Skagit, not going to Whatcom, but it certainly is in the other 3 counties that you have a presence in. And in 2023, we saw a slight change there as well. So other markets are picking up. There's no doubt about it. Here, especially in King County, inventory. That's the big problem you've got. I mean, you're looking at 35% drop year over year in number of new listings. That's a huge, huge discrepancy. But however, below $1 million, 32%, really kind of fairly equitable. It kind of surprised me a little bit. And remember, it's King County, guys. It's going down to Black Diamond. It's not just on the east side. And if you think about it, sales has to change. Didn't fare well. We saw transactions. Dean talked about that a while ago. We certainly saw a massive drop, 31%. But even then, the balance of the market, sub $1 million, was still down by what, 23%? Up in Snohomish County, we actually saw a big drop. But the luxury segment has been one that's been growing further to the north. Certainly around Edmonds is a classic example, and also on the periphery on the county lines. So we saw the listings start to pull off, but transactions, and it wasn't, $1 million before 2016 really wasn't there up north. That was like way too expensive. Maybe there's a few of those east siders and that's it. But it's pulled up significantly from that. And even down in sunny Pierce County. Pierce County is interesting. Historically, if you could afford to live in King County, you did. If you couldn't afford it, car, I-5, up north you go. Then in 2019, that changed. It was car, I-5, south. Why? $100,000 delta between median price in Snohomish and median price in Pierce.
Can I make an observation?
Yep.
Because it's not just north-south any longer.
Oh,
We're
no.
seeing people on the foot ferry. They're going to the Kitsap. And,
I've got a Kitsap, yeah.
Okay, and think about the I-90 corridor going east to Kittitas as well, because we got a story to tell there.
Oh, yeah, yes, you do. So, okay, big drop in sales, fine. So Kitsap, there you go. Again, it was actually a fairly, interesting, not just Bainbridge, but a market really. Again, everyone thinks about it, especially they think about military, but it is a pretty significant market. We only saw a 12% drop in transactions in the luxury sector, which is far lower than I anticipated, which was fun to see. And that's on listings rather. Sales, again, we saw luxury fall 90%, but still compared to those other 3 counties. Kitsap County is one. Again, because everyone's looked at it, ferries, not sure I want to do that. That all of a sudden, when you think about it, there's a value to our time. We'll pay more to live closer to where we need to be. But if we don't have to be somewhere, let's say an office, for a couple of days a week, sure, I'll go further out. And that is bringing up some of those ex-urban, I mentioned earlier, suburban markets, which previously had been ignored. It wasn't the fact we didn't have demand. We just didn't have supply. You can't sell what's not on the market. And yes, off-market houses, they are still transacting. They're painful to try and figure out how many of them, but Xing that out, any market sees systemic declines in value for one reason: too much supply. Only reason. And we're not there, or even close to it. I'm sure, sales were pulled ahead. Remember 2021? You guys did good. Everyone in real estate did remarkably well. But that was a function of those artificially low mortgage rates and some of those deals being pulled forward. Sellers, that right now, they're reluctant to lose their current financing, but as rates drop, well, then it becomes less compelling to stay. They will start, you'll start seeing those discretionary sellers, or indeed they'll think about being a buyer first before they think about selling their own home. So I think the market's set to pick up significantly, I really do. And as rates continue to fall, that momentum is going to grow. And then you'll have that, oh, in a second, I'll get ahead of it. So cost borrowing costs, rates pull back, fine. Homes as an investment vehicle are huge. They know it, your clients know it, and they really do. Especially just given the tax benefits of home ownership. I was actually thinking a while ago in a place, I said, okay, it's $500,000 if you're married, filing jointly, blah, 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 that we all know about. It's like, why don't they raise it? It should be 2 million, not 500,000. Well, the median home price in America is below 400,000. Just because we live out here, it's a very different situation. Urban markets, they were hit more, certainly. Why? Well, certainly on the other side of the bridges from where we are right now. How many here actually work in Seattle? A few, okay. I miss Nick Licata. I never thought I would ever say that. Nick Licata was a council member a number of years ago. I thought he was that far away from flying the hammer and sickle over City Hall. Well, then we had Miss Sawant, who made Nick look like Genghis Khan. The pendulum swung as far as it could in one direction, literally. Big shift in the makeup of City Council in Seattle today. We all know that, voted it. And so because of that shift, new council president, I think that Mayor Harrell's got a good potential now to actually get some of the things done which we need to have done. And that, people go downtown, maybe if they're not working there that often, you've got to figure out why they want to be there. Well, certainly civic amenities, the reason why we want to go to the restaurants, all these things, and that's great. But it's hard when you look around and see what's going on, certainly with the homelessness and various other issues. I think that pendulum is swinging back. And I think we're at the early days of the ability of somebody getting in now, where I think that we've got houses, certainly in the urban market, that are undervalued. I think there's very big upside in that respect. And Steve knows when I first met him, when they were building Concord before that, there's next to nothing, there's nothing being built right now, or very, very little. Yet at the same time, he and I were chatting in 2005, and we counted off 35 condo developments in Belltown.
Let's touch on that here, because it's very important that everyone understands that what was under construction and available for sale in downtown Seattle, 2/3 of that inventory has already found buyers and is sold. This year we'll only have one building deliver that we are representing. There's one that was delivered last year, and next year there is another building being delivered that we're representing. That's it. There's no other supply coming behind that because they haven't broken ground since 2020. And so you said you can't demand what doesn't exist. So what you see is what you get for inventory. And I can assure you that homes are being sold below replacement cost right now. And that those office buildings will not go unleased and empty. And stores will come back and restaurants will open. There will be a resurgence. And I think it's probably one of the better buying opportunities right now in our marketplace, because the replacement cost is $1,500 a square foot, and you can buy a brand new condominium for around $1,000 a square foot. So it's going to take a little while before developers jump into the ground, and there has been zero since 2020. And it takes 5 years to go from concept to closing in a tower. So just put that in
5? I think you're being very bullish at 5. I'd say it takes longer than that, depending. But the point is, by the way, if you think that all these empty office buildings will be converted to condos, no, they won't. It doesn't make sense for lots of reasons, one of which is, two actually big ones are plumbing penetration and core depth. You create a whole bunch of bowling alley units. You think about it on plumbing side, plumbing's only available in certain spots. And so that becomes very expensive. But in addition to that, it assumes for people that, okay, you're going to get that office building for nothing. No, you're not. So if I ruled the world, I would take an office tower and convert it to keep half an office, half a high school. Let's see how the office people think about that. All right. Change City Hall, sure. Things already mentioned about condos. So I think that is something which we can get ahead of. A few other things. Yeah, I think we'll see an uptick in listings. I think transactions will be up this year about 15%, is what I'm expecting to see. Over and above. If you made it through last year, well done. You did good. So I think it really was, quite frankly, a low point. Buyers, I mentioned, those cream puff homes, they're waiting for move-in ready. Get your pricing right. I say this all the time, it's really, really important. Home sellers have been on the controlling part of the world for a very long time. Quite frankly, since 2012, 2013 maybe. So they control the narrative. But there is still a price to be paid, and financing is not what it used to be. Crash. Some people still want to crash. I'm sorry, poppycock. I say poppycock because I'm English and I can.
Yes.
Yeah, I can. But in the luxury market, relatively modest growth in price. But growth, irrespective. These double-digit price appreciation, no. I don't like them. They're unstable. But will continue to rise. Rate of return, and certainly loans and luxury do look at that as much as anything else. Yeah, it'll be less than they've seen, but again, still positive. And the view is as a diversification in their investment portfolio, and also it's a roof over your head. I haven't seen anyone ever live under a stock certificate. Simple as that. Sales are down. US, actually Dean gave me this number in a call we had yesterday. Fewest number of transactions, resale transactions since 1993. That's a long time ago. And as we were talking, I do what I do and I live and breathe Excel. I'm like, okay, what happened around here? The last time we sold that few, 2011. Are we as bad? No, we're better.
Well, remember 2011 was like, we were all there. So give yourself some grace if you had a tough year, guys. It's coming back. It's coming back. I really, really believe this is the case.
Yep.
And anyone waiting around for some distressed sale because it feels like the Great Recession, no, there's not any distress. We talked about that. Like, when's the last time you saw a short sale or REO real estate? There's too much equity in these homes. So no one's letting them go at fraction.
Yeah, homeowners in King County with a mortgage, if you have a mortgage, on average in the third quarter, I'm waiting on Q4 numbers now, have approximately 60% equity in their home. Sorry, 60% of homeowners with a mortgage have more than 50% equity. Wow. I mean, I remember buying a home back in the early 2000s. It's like, my bank's like, you know what? Send us a copy of QuickBooks. I'm like, really? Hang on a second. My dog qualified for a mortgage, a zero down option arm with cash back at closing. What could possibly go wrong? Well, when I refinanced, it was like giving blood, literally. And my mortgage broker said, well, what does bank account go down in value? I went grocery shopping. Whole food, but still. So we are massively overqualified to buy our homes. We've built up massive amounts of equity already in our homes. Don't count. People have counted out Seattle several times in history, relatively modern history. They will say, it's going to go to the dogs. No, it always has a way of coming back. And not just out of Seattle, our greater Seattle metro area. Buy sidelines, yeah. But if we do see some more inventory, at FOMO, right, fear of missing out, that I think really is going to come into play. And all of a sudden, like, oh God, I mean, my buddy's been looking for houses, why aren't I? And it will all start turning around again. COVID, hit the urban markets, talked about that already. I think demand has bottomed out. We'll see more of demand, but certainly then we'll see supply. I'm pretty excited about downtown. I live in Queen Anne, but I love being downtown. I can't live out in the country. So it's a place that I think that it's a market which people are saying is never going to come back. They're going to be wrong. Now, do you love the region? I do. It's a cool place people want to be. And because of that, do I expect to see us recover? Sure. I'm not even sure that recover is the right word. Get through a situation that we did. But housing, it's viable, it's vital. It's a return on investment, sure. Inventory, limited inventory, absolutely. I mean, not like, as mentioned about Phoenix. I mean, it was rooftops and swimming pools as far as the eye can see. We have urban growth boundaries. They are not going to change. There's no political will. I sit on Governor Inslee's Council of Economic Advisors, and we talk about housing a lot. I scream housing at him a lot. And that's not going to happen. So finally, somebody mentioned, here we go, 11:10. You're welcome. House Bill 11:10, partially blame me for it. I was involved in actually writing that legislation, getting through, and was there when Governor signed it. Allows, as you know, the development of 2 units up to 6 unit buildings inside any single family zoned area in the state of Washington, depending upon population. Simple as that. We never came up with it. Minneapolis, Minnesota came up with it in 2016. They were the first ones to do it. State of Oregon, Governor Brown signed it into law in 2020. Newsom signed it into law in 2022. So we are further down the chain. What I found, and people found out I worked on it, I got pilloried. I got beaten up royally, literally. Say, oh no, value of my house is going to go down. You're going to build a duplex, and they're not going to mow the lawn, and it's terrible. And I coined a phrase then, it stuck with me, and that is, liberalism ends at the driveway. Think about it. It's true. It does. Anything we think can negatively impact the value of our home, which for almost all of us, biggest investment we may ever make, Well, no, I don't want them. You want to build that? Build it down in White Center or somewhere like that. Build it somewhere, not around me. Is it a panacea? No, it is not. Is it going to cure all? No, it's not. These are duplex permits, the 4-county area. Year to date actually is through November. I haven't got December numbers yet. We're down a level we haven't seen but before 2007. I mentioned Minneapolis, the first city to actually implement this law, 8 years ago now. How many duplexes has it built? 36. Oh no, the humanity. It really isn't. It will help, hopefully, over time, but here's the problem. You're not going to see a lot of that development, certainly not in our market, because why? We are already built out, literally. Zoning policy was created in America, across the country, in 1925, and it was designed to be one thing, exclusionary, in that period. If you look at the city of Seattle, 74% of the residential zone land in the entire city, Northgate to South Center, is zoned single family. Does that make sense? Not even close, but it is what it is. So it has become built out as mainly a single family area. So if a developer wants to build some duplexes or quads or triplexes, well, one, you've got to buy multiple homes, normally under different ownerships, herding cats, right? That'd be damn it impossible. But remember, the builder doing one thing. He's paying for the land. That's it. It doesn't pro forma. It doesn't make sense. That's why we're not going to see a massive jump. If you look at triplexes and quads, a bit better, but we're still well below where we saw back in the early 2000s. I just don't see it as having a massive impact. But I like to see it. No, but what are we missing? Missing middle housing, literally. And that's because of zoning. You start in your urban core. I think you mentioned this to me when we first met. The housing development looks like a wedding cake. And that is, closer to the job centers you are, the higher it is. And then as you go further out, it gets lower and lower. But that missing middle is my biggest concern around housing affordability. And that is housing for our nurses, our teachers, our firefighters, who can't afford to live anywhere. I mean, my late sister was a teacher. Her paycheck was an embarrassment of paychecks. But what it means is, yes, you can have suburbia, you can have your urban core. Then between those two areas, what you should have, live, work, and loss, cottage to housing, townhomes, row homes. Doing townhomes, do them to be simple, but that's the way you should do it. And that means you can get 18 units to an acre. You can get half a dozen plus units on an average single family lot. That's where we need to go.
We are going to unpack this in a big way. I know.
I'm not done.
And I want to just make a comment first. Is that this is one of our podcasts literally tomorrow, because I think it's an interesting conversation. People are afraid of House Bill 1110 affecting the property values. I tease Kurt Owen, who's making his way over here from Magnolia right now, and he's just like, what do you mean I'm going to have fourplexes in my backyard? I moved here because I love these streets, and I'm like, it's a mandate. Everywhere in Washington, in a city of a certain size, has to have this multi-family zoning on a single family lot, but it doesn't mean you have to build it.
Well, be careful when you use the word mandate, because you say mandate, people say it has to be built. No, it doesn't. You have to allow it to be built. Fine. Doesn't mean it will be built. I really just don't see it, because financially it makes no sense. Cost of capital for builders now. Back in the day, yeah, they were massively over-leveraged. I get it. OPM, other people's money. Now you can borrow 62, 63% of total cost. You've got to have skin in the game. So if you think about those houses, a couple of houses you have to build to tear down, and what they're going to cost you, and what it's going to cost you to build it, which, by the way, if you think about construction costs, lumber's down 400,000 board feet, but copper, steel, aluminum prices are up, PVC pipe, tracks oil prices, they're up. Labor, no one's going to school to become a plumber, a carpenter, or electrician, right? They're just not. So your labor costs are higher, and then you've got regulatory burden, regulatory fees, which in America on average is 25 cents of every dollar it costs to build a home, are fees.
And it's going to take a long time to get that inventory. So why are they asking for more density in these cities? Because we have affordable housing issues, and they want home ownership as well. And you try to think about, well, what would these ADUs and DADUs, whether they're attached or accessory to the building, what would they cost to build? And are they really going to be that affordable? More
than $100,000, but they're not being sold, they're being rented out. Yeah. And that's the big thing. So they're expensive to do. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, but simplistically speaking, in closing, is that, yes, it would be good to see. Will it happen? No, it won't. Certainly ADUs, no. I mean, again, there's all kinds of tax issues for that as well. But at the same time, do we need it? Yeah, because at some point, I look at the forced renters we have, who have got that money, as Steve was talking about, that want to buy. What can they buy and where can they buy it? The demographics speak to them as well. Over 1 million millennials here. in the 4-county area. So all these things are coming in place. Just have to kind of free them up somehow or another. It is hard, and housing affordability is low, and housing affordability is horrible. There's no county in the state of Washington that is technically affordable to a household making median income to afford to buy a median priced house. And I'm including Lincoln County.
And I think I saw that the requirement of King County based on the growth management projections was 17,000 new builds per year, which we're not hitting. 17,000 homes are needed to keep up with demand. So put that in perspective in King County alone. So that is what's giving rise to some of the demand that we're seeing, like at Trailside Homes, for instance, which is on I-90. You may not notice, but I-90 is 90 minutes from the Seattle-Bellevue metro area to get to Clay Elum. They have 1,000 lots up there that are hitting the price points of 600,000 to about 1.1 million, which addresses part of the missing middle. So it's sort of ironic. In order to meet King County's requirement for the missing middle housing, all you have to do is drive 20 minutes further across the pass and live in in Clay Elum. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're seeing, or get on a ferry and go out to Kitsap County, or up north, or down south. But it'll be interesting to see when House Bill 1110 is fully available, which has to be, basically offering permits by the summer of 2025, and you have to build them, how long it will take to make a meaningful dent in new demand. Because, Tadashi, we've had ADUs and DADUs in Seattle for how long? And I think I saw somewhere that they've only built 3,000 of them. Like, it's not a huge number.
Yeah, but it's growing, definitely,
Yeah.
because of the MHA killed the townhome market in Seattle. So the only thing that's cost-effective built for them right now are the single-family ADU DADUs.
Right.
But when the House bill passes, which is going to be, well, it's already passed.
Yeah.
It goes through all counties around here. It's not the panacea, so it's going to be not a silver bullet.
Anything's going to have to help. Anything's it will help, but the trouble is it's finding that land, because given the price, when you're buying a couple of homes to tear down, then you're only really paying for the land. You're paying a lot more for it because you're paying for what's on top of it. I think just making it just function from a pure finance perspective is going to be very hard for builders. But yeah, will it happen? Sure. Is it a panacea? No, I really think it's not. And we haven't seen that elsewhere around the country either, in the 13 states that actually have this kind of plan. Yeah, oops, sorry. Okay. People put their hands up, so I guess it's... Are you doing questions now or not?
Do you ever see a point in time where they'll be authorizing lot splitting?
I would be very surprised. I think that at some point they're going to have to. But I mean, I could get into a hour-long argument on. The question is actually, we get to a point whereby we're going to start seeing lot splitting.
Can you repeat the question?
Are we going to get to a point where we're going to start seeing lot splitting? Is that correct? Yeah. I would hopefully, yeah. I mean, the reason why I say hopefully is the fact that Steve mentioned buildable lands analysis, which has to be done by every county in the state based on GMA, and it's fine. But the trouble is the methodology is fatally flawed. It includes land which no one's ever going to build on. It's mountain goat lots. It's land so far away from infrastructure no one's going to build on. But it's included in the methodology. And back at UW, we actually talked real estate brokers into paying a bit more in signing fees to be able to commission me and a few other people to rewrite that methodology. That was going to be great. The Commerce Department came along and swooped up all the money. Imagine that. So it's going to get to that point because why do I say that? When we realise that we don't have enough land to meet our 20-year forecasts, that then requires the state to implement what's called reasonable measures to accommodate for that additional growth. So it will happen at some point. Whether it's soon or not, I don't think it is, because every county says, well, by this calculation, we're fine. No, we're not. But that's what they say, and that's what they get away with. But at the same time, the state itself doesn't want to come down with kind of Damocles' sword on each individual jurisdiction. They don't want to do that. Will they? If they have to, they will. They just don't want to. Like, fix your own house. Yeah.
In downtown Seattle,
yes,
there's an astonishing number of apartment buildings built.
Yeah.
Do you see any convergence happening on the horizon?
It could, potentially. I mean, certainly we're under construction, but nationally on about 1 million units right now. A lot of them are being built. They got through the issue on the moratoria on evictions, so rents skyrocketed, but they flatlined pretty much now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's feasible. It depends on who buys it. So think about Avalon Bay, the largest apartment developer owner in the country. It's contrary to their charter as a REIT. They're not allowed to do conversions. But Legacy are, RSIR, a bunch of other ones can. I think we possibly could, but the issue on that now is to do that, what is it going to cost? So many people, one, have to be offered that unit at a discount, and Dean knows all about this back in the day from a lecturer. But then you've got to give people X months relocation expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So we could, I just haven't heard anyone yet talking about the likelihood of a conversion, at least not in the last
You see, probably by
pre-COVID.
25 or 26, because developers won't be able to build new inventory in time. So, right up the nose, that was good. This is intoxicating to think about, that the demand is going to arrive just at the time that the supply will burn out. And that's the problem with high density, high rise multifamily, whether it's for rent or for sale. And you may have seen this slide from years ago, because you're looking at the view. If we jumped up to about 5,000 feet here, we would see downtown Bellevue, we would see Lake Washington, and we would see downtown Seattle, surrounded by single-family neighborhoods comprising 75% of the land. A lot of water, a lot of hills. And if you go between I-90 and 520, and you draw around that, I'm looking at Lorraine here, who's from Manhattan. Manhattan Island, okay, is 10 miles by 2 miles. Exactly the same geography as downtown Seattle, 520, 405, back down I-90, and finish up in downtown Seattle. And our Central Park is Lake Washington. But all of Manhattan is high density, high rises. And so we only have a few places to build the density, which is why we have light rail expansion, which is why you're seeing these boom burbs of what I think will be rezoning opportunities like you saw in Northgate. I think Factoria is probably a good target. I would see the Bell Red Corridor being a good target. They're going to have to figure out where to put the housing in high density, because we only have so many opportunities to do that in Seattle or in Bellevue. And that's the challenge, because I don't think HB 1110 is going to get us the inventory we need to match the demand for high density housing. And not everyone can afford a $3 million, $4 million single family house. So this is a major issue. So yes, we have a fundamental problem of where do we have the zoning to allow the high density? How long does it take to build the high density? And I think there could be some winners out there, and I know of a few buildings that are looking at conversions because they're going to have the supply when the demand arrives, and new developers can't deliver within 4 or 5 years. We've seen this before.
Also be careful, they mentioned Manhattan because of the big thing overhanging there is obviously rent control, which is a conversation I'm not going to get into. But it's so, yeah, I had no idea that the geography is the same. That's fascinating. Yeah, shoot, hello.
Hi. So I was just going to go back to the lot splitting because I'm a little bit confused about, maybe I misunderstood the question, but I was at Washington Realtors Legislative Days last week, and there was a House bill on administrative lot splitting that had already passed. And so we were going around thanking our House members and then talking to our senators who all seem to be supporting the lot splitting bill. So when you say you don't see it,
well, no, I say this. Again, I'll probably be saying if you're talking about vacant lots, vacant land, right? Well, then yeah, you can, but based upon 1110, you can do that, correct?
Yes, it's the administrative law. I can pull it out.
Well, yeah, well, great, yeah. No, so I was actually thinking in terms of if there was a residence on there, given the size of lots, and that's different. Maybe these guys know more about this than I do. So yeah, I mean, it will arguably come under the same auspices, wouldn't it?
okay, it's House Bill 1245, but Marcus is supporting it. And the literature that we have, it says realtors support legislation through which a homeowner can create an additional residential buildable lot through an administrative lot split. This determination would be made by cities through an administrative process similar to lot line adjustments, so that cities can ensure that the new residential lot meets various requirements, such as lot size, availability of utilities, legal access and easements, and compliance with critical areas, wetlands, and other environmental constraints. So that's already passed the House.
Right.
And the senators were saying that
it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I think there would be some issues. Again, I'm kind of getting at, these guys will talk about that more, but my only concern is going to be start bringing in that many more units potentially, schools. I mean, there's all kinds of issues on additional people, which again, I'm getting into their world and I don't want to do that.
Okay, so when you were saying that you don't see it happening.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I didn't think you were talking about vacant land. I thought you were talking about splitting an existing lot which has a house on it.
It is.
Well, I think that would...
A homeowner can create an additional residential buildable.
Oh, okay. Then again, I don't see it just given the fact of depending on where the house is on the lot. I think a lot of it wouldn't qualify. But again, you guys talk about this.
Well, the house might be worth too much, so I think if you're getting just to land value, that may be what happens. And I will say 1110 will also get homeowners to decide if they're living in a scraper or not, because in some of these locations near light rail, they can have up to 6 plexes being built on a single-family home lot. And so if you're in a mid-century rambler that you think has not got a lot of added value, but the ground underneath you has just become more valuable, I mean, that's something that we are looking at very closely, because there's some neighborhoods where there's a lot of that. Like, we're near light rail, we have a lot of, high equity, elder people in homes that are probably scrapers that just went up in value because they can build 4 to 6 homes on it. That's the kind of real estate that I think you will see turn. But if you have a decent house on a big lot right in the middle, and you can't split off the lot very easily, then you're not going to, cut off your nose to spite your face, right? Because the land isn't worth more than it is with the existing house on it. So I think it's a very case-by-case situation. And I also want to make mention of 1110. I think it's by the end of this year, all municipalities have to submit their zoning bylaws, so setbacks and fees, and basically the guardrails of how a developer would look at the land opportunity, and they may be different from municipality to municipality. So that has to be published by the end of the year, and then they have to be ready to issue permits by the summer of 25. Right? So smart money right now would be following that legislation, those guidelines, and trying to earmark, like, where is this gold rush going to occur? And there probably are neighborhoods that are really well positioned for it. So something to consider.
I think arguably the bottom line for me would be that, yeah, it's a good idea, but again, similar way to 1110, I just don't think it's being a panacea, and it's going to solve the issues we've got, which are far more significant. But anything that allows to add density, I'm always going to be a proponent of. Because housing affordability, so as you know me for a couple of decades, I've been jumping and leaping about this since I first came to Seattle, and it's something which still has got no better, quite frankly. So any advance we can make, absolutely, I'm a big supporter of. The guys don't think it's going to cure everything by next year, but these guys will talk about that. I should be done now because I know you're
doing great. We'll take some more questions. I think we're going to ask our panelists to go ahead and step up on stage with us here, and we'll have that conversation just shortly. But were there any other questions for Matthew? Let's give him a really hard one. Peter, couple more questions before we let him off the hook. Peter, did you want to ask him a zinger?
Matthew,
shoot.
Addressed earlier,
yes, sir.
Moderate growth in the Eurozone. Could you, I think...
Moderate economic growth.
The composition of your
Eurozone? Well, so in essence, the vast majority of Europe, exiting out Great Britain, because we decided to keep the King's head on our currency. But most of those markets are heading towards certainly Germany, Italy, even Great Britain are getting very close to a recession. They're still seeing significantly higher inflation they'd like to see. Outside out, obviously, is Germany, and that's just because of what's going on over there. So it's most of the Eurozone, which is, in essence, Belgium, Hungary, Luxembourg, Italy, Germany. Oh, God, I go back to my geography lessons. Europe. Europe. So for the better part, that would be the area it is. And I think that no one's expecting to see significant growth there this year at all. And so I really think that, and actually I was listening to market talk this morning, and they're saying, yeah, we well sub 1, but a lot, especially Germany. Germany is very, very close to entering recession right now. There's a big thing going on in Davos in Switzerland right now where all these muckety-mucks are talking. And their view is that, yeah, they're not seeing any kind of real growth occurring in that market during the course of 2024. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Hello.
Hi. Sorry, this is a little bit different, Matthew, but families and parents are concerned about the schools and school districts and what happened to the children? Like, where are they? Where'd they gone? Right? All of even Mercer Island, where I am, our superintendent, our school district there was talk about closing elementary school.
Yep.
All the parents are up in arms,
Yep.
And then you hear that in Seattle, etc.
Yeah.
So can you enlighten us a little bit about what you see happening in the future?
Sure. In terms of school, I think we already talked about it a lot, and that is the fact millennials are having fewer children. The old 2.4 kids and a dog and a white picket fence, the big thing everyone wanted, that's gone away. And so a lot of I said 30 to 40-year-olds, well, certainly 30-year-olds, 30, 35, are saying, no, I'm either going to have one and stop, or I'm going to have none. And so that's it. Plus the fact of actually people getting educators in, we underpay our teachers egregiously. And it's very hard to get people there, having gone and qualified as a teacher, to not go the route of a private school.
Right, so don't be surprised if you do see elementary schools closing in your area.
If there aren't enough people, they're just going to make a financial decision.
Right.
And a lot of it is that these younger people, that generation, just not, kids aren't the big thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody
Final questions, Danny. Make it a good one. What's happening
That's
with
scary.
the Red Sea? Do you feel like that's going to impact the supply chain and the
Yeah.
for mortgage rates in the foreign market?
Yeah, Red Sea issues. Again, as you know, we've actually seen a tripling in the cost per freighter in terms of pushing freight around. It's taking a week longer. And of course, a lot of people are saying because of that by the very nature of it is inflationary. I think it's going to get solved pretty quicker than people think. The US Navy is created already a pretty significant presence there. So I think what they end up doing is creating shipping lanes and then stopping the Houthis from doing what they're doing. So I think that a lot of people are trying to wait for a shoe to drop that might not necessarily drop, in the same way they thought the same thing when it comes to energy prices because of Russia and also them blowing up kind of gas lines and things. So yeah, I think it's tough. I think it will certainly act as a bit of a headwind to inflation dropping and make it maybe a little bit more sticky. But outside of that, I really not seeing it as being so impactful that it can really kind of turn the tide, no pun intended, in the fact that push us back in terms of hyperinflation, these kinds of things. I think it'll get figured out. We've still got a pretty big Navy over here. And so by taking care of that, we could see some temporary issues, but it's nothing which is going to be catastrophic. At least I don't believe so.
We asked those questions of you guys, and overwhelmingly what I learned is most of you feel like we're going to push through the geopolitical dysfunction, the political dysfunction, some of these challenges that are out there. It feels like most of you believe we're going to be back in the business that feels a little more normalized this year, because those were very specific questions, like how much of an imposition is the presidential election? How much are we going to be waiting for lower rates? And are these geopolitical concerns going to be sidelining buyers or sellers? And the answer was no. They think we've seen enough. It's priced into the market. Same with the stock market.
Yeah, I think Israel-Palestine is a very, very tough one. Outside of that, I think there's probably one more year left in Russia. With the issue of Ukraine, I think that at some point somebody will figure out a backdoor for Putin. He can kind of sneak away having lost, but not actually acknowledging he lost. And things will change there. So I think we're on the downside of that equation. So overall, again, we talk about anything that's catastrophic. I guess I would close with the fact that, thank you, Barney Frank, that every year, 21 major banks in America have to go through what's called a stress test. And that is to say, okay, look at your portfolio. You will, tomorrow, there's a 40% decline in commercial real estate values. There's a 40% decline in residential real estate values. The unemployment rate goes to 10%, and there is a severe global recession. Can you survive? Pretty tough. Agreed, you asked me. They all said, yep, no problem. So I think that we are in a pretty good shape to go through any additional unforeseen situations that we could find here. So yeah, I mean, will it look a bit more normal? Yeah. Will it be normal? Last time real estate was normal was, I think, 1991. Think about it. That's just before Clinton came in. So we had this massive run up, then it crashed, and then COVID. So yeah, it's been a long time to what really is normal. But will it be better this year than last year? Heck yes, it will.
Yeah, and that's our view, is the inflection point has arrived, meaning that the rising mortgage rates are now falling, and what was worried to be a catching a knife in real estate values is now inclining, and the S&P Case-Shiller will come out next Tuesday and remind us yet again that all of the 20 cities are seeing year over year and perhaps month over month now median home price increases. I think it was just Seattle and Portland that were lagging. But really what that's saying, guys, is that our correction is done. So if you're waiting for better deals in housing, you just heard what we said about new construction and inflation. It's unlikely that we're going to see prices correct because there's no issue with the underwriting of these properties, not like we had
with the mortgage and credit crunch about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when we were really facing a true financial correction.
By the way, the Case-Shiller, Bob Shiller, that index is released 90 days, 3 months late. So 3-month moving average released 3 months late. So you're thinking about what the hell was going on back last October. So it's not timely, big time.
Well, let's thank you again.
Sure.
Join us right here.
Sure.
And then I'm going to hand you the microphone also, Kurt, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of a point of view on where we're at in this cycle. You've been through, 44 years of recessions and presidential elections. And I know one of the big questions everyone has is what's going to happen with the state, with the mindset of the investor over the next year, and how do you think that's going to reflect in housing?
Oh, that's a good question. It's going to be interesting because there's so many cross currents, and I'm sure you've already talked about. One of the questions everybody asked as well is the Fed going to cut anytime soon? And some people say, well, the inflation numbers would suggest that the Fed could cut, and if the Fed cuts, they're kind of an awkward spot because they were kind of late with. Remember it was all transitory. Oh, it's all transitory. It's going to go away soon. Well, they're wrong about that. And so they were late, and then if they come in and cut now, okay, they could be accused of being early or not being very circumspect. They're late now. They're early. They don't want to do that. They've got a reputation and an image to uphold. And then the second part of that is they don't want to be accused of trying to help one party over another. That's always a problem. So even if they wanted to, and it might be the right thing to do, there's some reasons why they might not. So the thinking, and if you look at the futures markets, which is pretty accurate, they're looking at probably May, June, somewhere out there to start seeing cuts. One of the other questions that people ask is about, the soft landing. Everybody wants one. I mean, who doesn't, right? Nobody wants a hard landing. Maybe some people do if you're short. But the history. No, I didn't know you could take that 2 ways. You're quick. Yeah, I mean, if you're short the market. But that's one of those things that really wants to. We all want, and we build these arguments in our head of to support what we want to have happen. But the fact of the matter is, I was using Blackstone's numbers because Blackstone's so good with their numbers, and I think, and I'm doing this from memory, but it was like 14 recessions. There's been 11 of them were not soft landing. So the odds are, don't plan on a soft landing. That's more or less what they were saying. The cool thing about the markets in general, and in your world of economics, it's kind of the same thing. Is, I tell my clients if you're looking, if you're in absence of certainty, rely on statistics, right? And if you're looking for certainty, markets aren't the place to do that. So luckily, there's very few, maybe baseball and a couple other things that have more statistics than the stock market, bond market, and economics. So there's a great body of statistics that you can rely on when you're trying to make decisions in an uncertain world. And it may be completely counter to what you believe or see or hear on the news. And by the way, the news is the worst thing in the world because the news always tells you what everybody already knows. And you can't make money on what everybody already knows. It doesn't work that way. You have to make money on what nobody's figured out yet. And then they do, right? So the fact that most people get or make their decisions on what they read and see and hear and everything like that. You're already late. It's too late. It's already baked in. You didn't learn anything. It might sound good at a cocktail party, but that's about it. But statistics can give you that edge. Like, for example, when you think about the presidential cycle. And if you go back, to the 30s or wherever stock traders are, almanac started keeping statistics, there's a real pattern to the presidential cycle. first year of the presidential cycle, generally speaking, it's the economic term, it sucks, right? That's economic term. And the reason why is because if you're president or whoever's in power, and you got 4 years, your whole idea is to do all the unpopular, hard, bad things first, so you can clean up the mess as you get close to the election. So, and a good example is you think about Obama, right? The first thing he did was Obamacare. It was a mess, it was popular, unpopular, whatever, but that's what they did first. And now you got 3 years to clean up the mess afterward. So you look at the first year, year and a half of a presidential cycle, market's pretty rough. Guess where we're headed? Would it be a surprise? Probably not. Would it be a surprise to be a recession? Probably not. Expect great market returns? Probably not, statistically, right? And then you go through, the market tends to bottom in the second year, midterm election cycle, that's what they call it, tends to bottom, and then they pretty it all up with every trick they can do going into the next election cycle. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it something to pay attention to? Absolutely, because the numbers are there. So I answered quite a few questions. I might have front-run some of the questions, but I just wanted to kind of paint the picture there of how I and we look at the world using statistics and trying not to get too hung up in what the news is saying.
Good point. Well, I'm going to change up a little bit. Jennifer, let's talk with you for a second about, changing lives, and tell us what happened in Breckenridge and this, I would call it, enlightenment moment that you had, because I'm so proud of you. And as I look out on this audience, for many of us that were trying to question our path over the last couple of years, and here they are now, and a little vote of self-confidence, which we all need, right? I think your story is amazing. Would you share it with us?
Okay, I've never been quite put on the spot like this before, but I had wanted my whole life. I lived kind of in a state of survival. I had a lot of responsibilities. We all do. And I pushed off the very thing I wanted to do the most, which was my passion, which was singing, playing music. I would start with, you don't have to do it the extreme way I did it, which was quit my day job and start playing on the streets of Kirkland, which is how I began my music career. But I would say that for me, it was that much of an extreme choice, and it was that desperate of a time for me in my life that it was kind of a now or never. About the time I jumped right into the streets of Kirkland, got a little bit of headway. People responded to me a lot better than I thought they would. They didn't think I was homeless. They felt my essence, which I think we all feel each other's essence when we're truly authentic.